Welcome to All In with Evan Jarvis, the poker podcast where we go all in with poker champions past, present, and future. Welcome to All In with Evan Jarvis. This podcast is going to bring you some of the most successful players in the world, and that includes players you haven't heard of. Why? Because it's champions past, present, and future. So today, my guest on the show is Blake Vita. And you might be saying, who is Blake Vita? Blake Vita was the first person to come on my poker coaching live streams on Twitch back in 2012 when I decided that I wanted to make teaching poker my primary focus. If you're interested in going back and watching those episodes, there's about 30 of them, and they're available on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gripst. Coming into this podcast, Blake chopped a live tournament in Jacksonville for $18,382. This was his biggest score ever. And immediately, like any excited person would do after a big achievement, he went on Facebook and posted that he just had his biggest win ever. So when I saw that Blake had had this score and I could tell how excited he was, I was like, perfect. We can do an interview talking about his experience with this big win and kind of capture those feelings of what it's like to have, a life-changing score that really changes one's perspective on things. Blake is a part-time poker player. He also has a job in advertising and marketing. So one of the things we talk about is how to make a solid income while being a part-time poker player. Obviously, the approach as a part-time player is different than the approach of a full-time player, but there is a lot of crossover. A really important thing in that area is making the most of your sessions at the table. This means the importance of game selection, choosing the best table to be on, choosing the best seat to be in, but it also means day selection and time selection. We also talk about something that's very dear to my heart, which is the importance of having a supportive family and a supportive network around you. Speaking of the importance of having support and of having connection, I was pretty happy to see that following this podcast, Blake chopped another tournament, a $570 buy-in at the Hard Rock for $29,503. Blake was playing 4 no limit. That's like $4 buy-in tables when he found Gripst back in 2012. And now he's landing 5-figure scores, and that's trending upwards. I didn't really know what Blake was up to too much between 2012 and now, but I realized that's because he was focusing on his highest value activities. He was focusing on studying. He was focused on practicing. So that's a little synopsis of what's going to be coming your way over the next couple of hours. I hope you enjoy the conversation, and I hope you learn some lessons that will help you boost your confidence and build your bankroll. Now, without further ado, let's get stacked. Blake, it's great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and it's great to be back technically for a third time on the Grip shows. Love it. Thank you again for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man, you are a legend. You're quickly racking up the most time on the air, and I think it's probably because we get into some really good conversation and we have really good connections, so it's always a treat to have you.
Yeah.
Recently, you had the biggest score of your career. Tell us a little bit about this. It was a tournament, correct? Live tournament?
Yeah, it was actually a WPT tournament. So it was in Jacksonville. I live in Florida. I have a couple of poker friends that we travel along the Florida's coast when we have these big tournaments come our way. So that'll be in like Hollywood or Daytona or Jacksonville or wherever it might be. So this one, it was a WPT series in Jacksonville. So we drove up there. I think it was a $360 buy-in tournament, 2 days. Well, there was a bunch of day ones during the week, but the second day was on Sunday. We drove up on Saturday because I have a full-time job and I work during the week. So me and my friend drove up early Saturday morning, played the flight that was in Saturday afternoon. I made it through to day 2. Unfortunately, he didn't. My friend that I was playing with, that I swapped percentage with, everything just kind of coasted. We can go into details about, some hands in the tournament if you want, but everything kind of coasted, and day 2 went really well. Got lucky in some key spots and, got to the final table and really just ran like a god and cashed for the biggest score of my life, a little bit over 18K.
I definitely got to agree with you that running like a god and having everything fall into place is really important for getting those big scores. A friend of mine in college said, to win a poker tournament, the stars have to be aligned for you. And when they are, you just have to kind of go with the flow, not do anything stupid, and the results will probably come. So I'm curious, what was it like, winning $18,382, winning like, what is that, 660 buy-ins?
I mean, it felt amazing. Like like I said, I have a full-time job, and any time where you can make a very big percentage of your salary in 2 days feels obviously amazing. When I was playing poker more full-time, I would look at it more in the course of buy-ins, like you just explained it. But right now, when you have a big win like this, when you have a full-time job, you're playing just for supplemental income, you look at it more as kind of a percentage of what you make a year, and it just really blows your mind on what you can do with poker as kind of like a side job. It's really crazy.
Yeah, super cool. So in addition to the tournaments, do you grind cash games as well on the regular?
I do. Every weekend I'll go. There's a place called Orange City. It just opened up, and it's about 25 minutes away from my house. And I'll just go there and I'll play cash with some of the friends that I was telling you about earlier. I'll usually play 2-5 because that's usually the biggest no limit game they run there. They have a lot of PLO games that are, I think around 2-5 as well, which obviously play bigger. But in regards to no limit, I don't think it ever gets above 2-5 at Daytona or Orange City, which are the closest ones. I'd have to go to Tampa, I think, which is like an hour and 30 minutes away to play 510.
Cool. So you're playing one of the biggest games in the room. You're grinding consistently. You're putting in that volume. You're in good form. Do you think that kind of regularity of play really came into the picture in helping you get that result and in helping you perform when you were under pressure in that tournament?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you take any sort of break from poker, like it's just such an ever-changing game that you won't necessarily get behind, but you'll just feel rusty. Like, I don't know if you ever taken like a couple month break from poker and then gone back, you just feel so rusty. Eventually you get back into it. But if you don't have, like, confidence is such a big part of how well you do at the poker table. If you don't play for a while, you lose that confidence. So it's really important to, if you want to, be confident, do well in these tournaments, you'll have a lot more luck if you play a bunch and keep your game going. It doesn't matter if you technically, fall behind the super sicko pros, but if you're just confident in your own game, you'll be able to do a lot better than if you took giant breaks.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you 100% on that one. I forget where I heard it, but someone said, if you were going to bet on someone in a competition, do you want the guy who's been playing once a year or the guy who's been playing once a week? And everyone would say, well, the guy who's been playing once a week. And then you could take it further. Do you want the guy who's playing once a day? Well, provided he's getting adequate rest. You want the guy who it's his natural state to be playing poker. And whether it's a poker tournament or a cash game, just the act of playing poker, the handling the chips, the seeing flops, the making reads, that stuff, if that is kind of the default operating mode of behavior, it's going to lead to performance. And when the pressure comes on, you're going to be like, this is my zone. This is my comfort zone. I have no problem being here.
Yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit about how you felt going into day two and how you felt as the blinds were escalating, the field was whittling down, and you were kind of recognizing that you had a chance to get, a solid score, potentially a career shifting score?
Yeah, so I had a pretty decent stack going into day two. I think we were 30 or 40 people off the money going into day two. I was really relaxed going into it, mainly because I had one of my really good friends there with me. His name is Zev. And we got a hotel room actually completely unplanned. We actually went there Saturday night. I'll go back a little bit. Or Saturday during the day. Played until Saturday night at like 11:30 p.m. when I made day two. That's when I called around looking for a hotel. Finally found a hotel, and we drove to the hotel. We got there at like 1 or 1:30 or something like that. Fell asleep. We played a few flips just for fun, and then we fell asleep, and then woke up totally relaxed. Even though I didn't get, as much sleep as you should going into a day two, I still woke up like super relaxed, just because I had, my friend there. We were talking, like right when I woke up, we were discussing, who was at my table. We were using Hen and Mob to look at them, see what's going on, look at the chip stacks, look at, what's up top, look at all that stuff. And just having someone there. And I think that's another good point to bring up too, is like how important it is to have poker friends in your life that you can talk to about stuff like that. Is because that just, made me super relaxed to going into day two. And then as the blind levels were going up to where starting stack was big blind and starting stack was small blind, all that stuff, where you start to realize, going on and on in the tournament, it definitely gets to you after a little bit. And you're like, dang, I actually have a really decent shot at winning this thing. I really need to start focusing, because of course the deeper you get into a tournament, the more real life money value your decisions are worth, because of ICM and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely a really crazy experience going through the levels and seeing the chip stacks rise into over 1 million, then over 2 million, and all that progression is actually pretty insane to live out. I've been there like a couple of times before, but never for an amount this big. And it was really crazy to experience.
Yeah, it's definitely like an unparalleled feeling in the world to get deep in a tournament, in a big competition. And you mentioned that as the final table came around, you're like, okay, I need to get more focused. Did you implement any specific strategies for the final table or the final table bubble to really kick up that level of focus and get yourself more attuned with the moment and what was really happening?
Yeah, so the one thing, I didn't look at any of the payouts at all for the final table. I don't know how much that mattered. It was kind of like a thing where I just didn't want to know, because I wanted to focus on playing my best, because I knew this was going to be for more money than I ever played for in my life. So, I wanted to just focus. The one piece of strategy that I took into the final table, which I feel like is one of the most important strategies to take in any final table, any poker tournament, is just taking really good ICM spots and recognizing who at the table knows what ICM is and who you can make moves against. Because of course you can take a really good ICM spot versus a good player who recognizes what that is. But in a lot of these, lower buy-in tournaments with really high guaranteed prize pools, a lot of the players aren't, the best poker players, and they don't really know what ICM is. So even if you do make a really good ICM move, where you put someone in this like ridiculous spot where, they have close to the top of their range, but there are 3 short stacks with like 5 big blinds, and they're supposed to be in this like hyperflux situation of like, what am I supposed to do here? Those people won't be thinking about that kind of stuff, so it's harder to make those moves against them. So I feel like that was the biggest piece of strategy that I took into the final table.
I agree with you. It's very essential to have a good understanding of ICM and an awareness of who doesn't have a good understanding, because in these smaller buy-in, I mean, they're not small by any means, but smaller relative to 5Ks and 3Ks and 10Ks. These final tables, people get there and their lack of awareness around this concept leads to them making mistakes for really large amounts of money. And when people make ICM mistakes, everyone else at the table benefits. So in these fields, it's like, just if you can get to the final table, just get there, because then you're going to get a lot of gifts. I'd like to hear your understanding of it for the listeners out there who aren't too familiar with ICM and what it is. Could you give us Blake's, 60-second breakdown of ICM and independent chip model?
Okay, so I have a very broad understanding of ICM. So, just a quick explanation of how little I think I know about ICM, but I still know enough. I was at Greggy's final table, I think it was like 3 years ago, when he final tabled, I think it was a 6 max event. It was definitely a no limit event. It was at the start of the series near the Colossus.
I think it was the 5K.
Yeah, it was the 5K. I walked up and I was like, oh my gosh, Greggy's at a final table. I got to go watch him. So I sat down. I was the only person, all my friends were playing. I was like, I can't play right now. I have to watch this. Because a couple other really good people were there too. Like, I think Jason Wheeler was at that final table. I think there were a bunch of really good people at that final table that I just wanted to watch. And it so happened that one of the Germans were at that final table too. So when I sat down, immediately George Danzer and like three other Germans just like sat down right behind me, and they're like just talking about these like crazy ICM situations. I'm just sitting there, just listening, listening to these sicko Germans talk about ICM. I'm like, I know absolutely nothing about this compared to that. But to get to your point, I know enough about ICM to recognize that people need to be more conservative when there are smaller stacks of the table that are about to bust. Like, for example, if there are 3-5 big blind stacks on the table and you have a person with like a 30 big blind stack to your right, you can start 3-betting them like crazy, especially if they're opening a lot, because they have to fold so much their range because of the people that are about to bust. They don't want to play a big pot, especially out of position. Like, they can't really, 4-bet bluff shove unless they're an absolute sicko with like ace-9 suited or something if they open from the hijack and you 3-bet from the button because of these other stacks at the table that are about to bust, because that's just kind of ICM suicide. That's kind of how I understand it. So that's kind of how I played it. Is I had a couple of good players that I could tell knew what ICM was, opening a lot, from my rights, and I was actually in a pretty good spot, and I just kept 3-betting them, and it kept working because I think it's because they realized that, like, okay, these three guys are super short, and if I 4-bet bluff shove against this guy and he actually has a hand, then I'm just committing ICM suicide. Is that I feel like that's that's my understanding of it, and hopefully that's not too far off, because I am technically a recreational player, so I want to save face as much as I can.
Yeah, it's a pretty good understanding. And I feel like with a lot of these concepts, simply understanding the concept and having like a general gist of it, so it's running in the back of your mind and being factored into your decision making, is enough. For my career, I didn't drill down all the numbers. I don't know everything down to like the 0.01 of expected value, but I'm aware of like which concepts to be considering. And so ICM, independent chip modeling, is basically placing a dollar value on your chips based on your expected finishing position if you ran the tournament out kind of an infinite number of times, where you're likely to finish, all things being equal. And based on that, you can decide if you want to take on more risk or less risk. And that's why if there are a lot of short stacks, you generally want to wait until they get eliminated before you get involved in high risk situations. Because if you're kind of guaranteed to get second or third 90% of the time, but by taking an aggressive spot, you might go out fifth or sixth. That's why they call it really like ICM suicide, because, all you had to do was basically do nothing and you were going to make a lot more money. But because you violated that concept, you got a lot less. And ICM kind of comes in the form of attacks where you need more equity than you would otherwise to get involved in a situation. And the more extreme the pay jumps and the more extreme the distribution between the chip stacks, the higher that tax is. And, it's more significant when it's second place against first place stack than it is when it's fifth place against first place. So it's all your stack relative to the other stacks. There's a whole bunch of things going on. And the general rule with ICM is you can put the last bet in semi-wide, like, where you were 3-betting light, but you can't call off wide.
Exactly.
You have to really narrow your calling range, because when you're going to have to show down, you have to be able to cover that premium. And that's why, unless you're the big stack putting pressure on the smaller stacks, generally final tables are going to not require, but benefit from tighter play and more selective play. It's kind of what we called, I think it's in part 4 of the MTT strategy guide, going into closing mode. That's being like super selective of your spots and who you're battling.
And I had like 40% of the chips in play with 9 people left or something absurd. So I was just able to take so many of those spots.
Okay. So you were the one who was able to apply the ICM pressure to the other players.
Yeah, that was my plan. That I was 3-betting a lot with suited aces, suited kings versus people that were opening a lot that had these 30 big blind stacks after the short stacks have already folded. So, if the short stacks have already folded, and then, I'm on the button and the cutoff with 30 big blinds effective raises, I'm like 3-betting with like any suited king, any suited queen, any suited ace, just because they have to fold so much of their range, especially if they know exactly what I was saying earlier, like if what ICM is, because, those three people, like a good thing is I don't have to show down that often because the short stack's already folded. If they get a hand that they want to go with, it's not like a huge risk for me. I don't have to show down the queen three suited or whatever. But I can definitely 3-bet bluff so much, obviously folding to a 4-bet, but they just can like almost never 4-bet as a bluff ever. Even they have to fold like, I don't know if they have to fold like sevens or something, but
they'd probably be encouraged to fold sevens in situations like that because the downside of going bust is so big relative to just staying out of harm's way. And like you said, you don't have to show down. Like even if they have a good enough hand to call, like a king queen suited or an ace jack suited, you can still take it down post. And if they ever move over the top of you, you just like fold, no problem. You could even Hollywood it, and they'll be like, is he fooling around? Like, you know what? This is a big situation for me. I can't afford to like risk whether he's screwing around or not. I'm just going to have to. They have to respect ICM. If they know what they're doing, they kind of have to respect ICM. So I'm really curious. You said you had your friend Zev. Was that his name? Yeah. Zev there? And you had a swap with him. How big was your swap? And do you feel that too played into him being like motivated, excited for you to win, like excited to be involved in the process?
So we swapped 10%. And Zev and I have been friends for like over 5 years. So he definitely would have been invested in any sense. Like even if that was my second bullet where he wouldn't have a percentage of me, he would be just as invested and just as excited for me. Same as me for him, which, is fantastic to have people like that with those positive vibes hanging out with you in your life for sure.
Yeah. Having good vibes and a good support squad at final tables is essential. In all the final tables I've done well at, I've had people there supporting me who had a piece, and in the final tables that my friends have done well at, I've usually been there front and center because, I love to watch them succeed, but I also have a small piece. So like I'm here energetically. And when more people than yourself want you to win, there's this strange shift that seems to bring a positive energy that leads to that happening. I feel like it's easier to be more resilient when like a beat happens or something. It's just easier to stay confident because you've got someone there you can talk to, you can decompress with, or you can just, get a high five, positive vibes, whatever you need.
Yeah, there was this one guy though because so when we were in the final table, Zev was on the rail obviously, and they actually had the rail super far. So I actually asked the tournament director, "Hey, can you bring the rail closer?" So I didn't think it was actually going to do it. I'm like, "Can you bring the rail closer so Zev can watch?" And the guy's like, "Sure." So he brought it up right to the table. So I'm like, "This is fantastic." So there was this guy that I knocked out right before the bubble. Like the guy was out before anybody even cashed. He was just hanging out the entire rest of the tournament. It had to be like 6 or 7 hours since we cashed to when the tournament ended. He was just hanging out watching the tournament. I felt kind of bad for he was like a 60-year-old dude who was just, hanging out just because he likes poker, I guess. Yeah. But like when Zev was railing me, this guy like went up to Zev and he was just like, he's made friends with Zev. And that guy was on my rail by the end of it. He's like, fuck yeah, Blake. He was just cheering for me. And it felt great. I'm like, I'm sorry I knocked you out, man, but thank you for being on my rail. I appreciate it. So whenever I went to talk to Zev, and this guy, you could tell, didn't really know much about, advanced poker, anything at all. He was just kind of playing to play. So whenever I went over to talk to Zev about a spot, that guy would always scooch in a little bit, like try to listen. And he's like, hey man, yeah, I think you should raise aces if you get them. Thanks, man. Hey, listen, I appreciate that, buddy. I appreciate it. But he was cheering for me, so I couldn't really be mad. He was being a good guy.
It's awesome, man. And everyone loves to be on a winning team. And that's what's pretty cool. Even though he got KO'd, he still got to feel like a winner. Speaking of good feelings, how good did it feel getting to ship your buddy a couple thousand when the weekend was done?
Yeah, no, that's always the best feeling. And honestly, that's I don't know why, but I like giving my friends money from my wins more than I enjoy the money that I get from the wins. If that sounds weird, I don't know. But like whenever I can if they have a piece of me and I'm like, dude, I won you this money. Here you go. This is for you because I won it for you. This is amazing. It just makes me feel so good. And I kind of just forget about the money that I won. Of course, it's important to me to an extent for sure. But it just feels so sick to just give someone $3K because they had a piece of you in a tournament, In this case, it was 1.8, but, whatever. It's still just so sick.
Especially in tournaments. It kind of does feel like it was free a little bit. It kind of feels like you won the lottery where you're like, I'm still going to have like 16,000 versus 18,000. I still have 16,000 more than I did 2 days ago. And my friend has 2,000. Sweet.
Yeah. And the thing is, it feels equally as good to take money from him. I have a pretty funny story about one of the high hands that runs at our casino. And I'm sure most everybody knows what a high hand promotion is. But just in case you don't, the casino that we play at runs a high hand every 30 minutes. The amount varies on what day it is. On Saturdays, it's going to be bigger. On Mondays, it's going to be lower. On this was like 4 years ago. On this particular day, it was $800 every 30 minutes. And you have to have at least aces full of deuces to qualify for the high hand. And when it is this much, when it's $800, you get a lot of people that come and play. So there's so many tables. Like there's probably like 20 or 30 tables in this poker room, which is actually pretty big. So Zev and I did this thing where we swapped 100% of the high hands. So if I won, I'd have to ship him $800. If he won, he had to ship me $800. Just because we were bored and we wanted to do it. And 2 minutes into the next high hand, so there was 28 minutes left on the clock. He gets aces full of threes, and he gets put on the board. And we're like, okay, aces full of threes with 30 freaking tables running. Like, there's no way this is going to hold. Right. When it gets down to 2 minutes left, he's like, I'm going to be so tilted if I win and I have to ship you $800. And we swapped 100%. And lo and behold, like a minute, because you have to like run it for a minute after to let the hands finish from the previous thing. Lo and behold, of course, he wins, and they give him 8 black chips, and he has to just hand them right over to me, and I'm just like, ship it. And that was like 15 minutes after we made the swap too, so it was like the sickest thing ever. So it feels just as good to take money away from him as it does to give it to him, because it's all, in good fun, but it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and if money's cycling in the group, that means that good things are happening. Like overall, you guys are winning if there's money to be shared. So let's get into your background a little bit. What motivated you to get started in poker?
Actually, World of Warcraft motivated me to start getting into poker. So I was playing WoW for pretty much all my high school career, like a lot of people did, because that game was super popular. And I saw one of my favorite content creators playing poker. And I was like, this looks pretty cool, because it's kind of the same thing as a video game. It's kind of the same thing as World of Warcraft in a sense, where you have to balance, statistics and all that stuff. I was dumb at the time, but I was like, yeah, this kind of looks cool. Maybe I'll try it. So, back then I was super young and I didn't really have a place to go or anything. So all I did was watch poker videos all day, every day. I watched the World Series, watched all that stuff. And that's when I first found my initial inspiration for it. I was like, okay, this game looks ridiculously fun. I really like this a lot. But I never got into it. So then college comes around. I'm in my freshman or sophomore year in college, and I wasn't in a fraternity, but I was friends with a lot of people that were in a fraternity, and they always had poker nights. And during the poker nights, I got super into it. I was like, okay, these kids, I need to actually beat them instead of just, instead of just like going there and trying to like act like I was good because I had an interest in poker when I never really studied it. So the next couple of days, I went and I bought Daniel Negreanu's book from the library, and I read about 2 pages of it, and I still have it. And I never read any of it ever again. And then I went back to the poker games, acting like, yeah, I have Daniel Negreanu's book, even though I never even read it. So I went there, and I told everyone I had Daniel Negreanu's book, so everyone's like scared of me, and I still lost, and I still felt like an idiot because I'm like, I didn't read any of that book, and I know nothing about poker. And it was about that time where I discovered you, and I discovered, your training and all the materials that you have. And that's actually what got me interested in figuring out, okay, I need to really like buckle down and figure out why, people make certain decisions in certain spots, and all the basics and all that stuff, and then get into some more advanced things with the live training that we did. And then all of your guides really helped me with everything when I was up and coming. It was super helpful, and it all just skyrocketed from there. After then, I just put in a bunch of volume. I put in hundreds of thousands of hands online, which really helps you learn. And then I just switched to live. Like live 2.5 is equivalent to probably like 25 NL online, which is a ridiculous pay jump. Of course, you're getting less volume, but it's still very profitable for someone who can win at NL 25 and stuff like that. And I played up to NL 200 online, but kind of stopped there. And then I just went to live after that.
Right. Very cool. I have a very similar story, except when I found out that someone was reading poker books and everyone else was making fun of him for reading poker books, I'm like, wait. They have books on this stuff? And then I went and bought the books, but I actually read them cover to cover.
Yeah, I should have done that. Right now I have No Limit Hold and Theory and Practice and The Razor's Edge on my desk, and I still haven't read through all of them. I've read like half of both of them, actually, but I need to read the rest.
Yeah, those books are absolute classics, those two in particular. And I know people say like, oh, you don't need any poker books. But I mean, books kind of lay out a roadmap. I kind of look at it as like the strategy guide or the walkthrough that you would get for a role-playing game, or, the character development guide for the different characters in Warcraft or Diablo, for example. And it's very helpful to have that roadmap, and then you kind of find your paths within that. I'm curious, though, what was it about the Gripsed YouTube videos that shifted your mindset from, I got this book and I'm going to read 2 pages, to, I actually want to learn this thing in depth? What was it about them that had that kind of impact on you?
That's a really tough question. I really don't know what made you inspire me so much to play poker and to learn about it. I think it might have been your inspiration and drive to play the game and to teach people that probably rubbed off on me in a certain way. But I honestly I don't know. But whenever I watch your videos from the first time, I'm like, okay, he's doing a bankroll challenge. I need to watch every single minute of every single video and rewatch it like 4 times. And I was just so into it, more than I was into anything in my entire life. I was just watching your videos religiously, like over and over, just learning everything I could. And then that skyrocketed into watching some of the more advanced videos online, like internet videos where he was talking about all the stuff where he, and Phil Galfond, it just exploded into everything. Like your videos were a gateway into everything else that I could have learned in poker. And you taught like so many advanced topics and like ways to think about the game so you could even understand those advanced topics. There's just so many things that I could have never even imagined that the game of poker consisted of. And you all had it all in one spot. And it just really, really caught my attention for sure.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, because I actually look at it as like Grip's videos are the gateway videos to the like really advanced training.
For sure.
Okay, so you had a lot of teachers along the way, which I think is essential to growth as a player. You want a lot of perspectives, you want a lot of different theories, a lot of different thoughts coming in. And we went over your methods for studying and improving. Do you have like a big aha moment from the journey that you'd like to share, where suddenly you just looked at things totally differently and something really clicked?
I don't think there was like a real big aha moment for me. I think it was all pretty gradual, honestly. I don't think there was that moment where I'm just like, something just completely changed in me. I think completely, because again, like your content like came out so often. Also, like you did live coaching every Saturday, I think it was. I forget which day it was.
At first, we were doing it every single day.
Yeah, every single day. So like it was just so much content coming out that there wasn't one big moment where I was just like, I understand the game, or like I understand the game enough to win. It was just all completely gradual, quick build up to where I just went from being a losing player at all stakes to beating 25 NL at 10 big blinds for 100, and then beating 500 NL live for ridiculous amounts that no 20-year-old should have that much money ever. So it was honestly just a very gradual thing, and I was very happy to have it.
Okay, so it was a matter of consistent exposure to poker knowledge, training, stimulus, and just kind of slowly saturating your brain pathways around poker and building that out where things just click together day by day, and gradually it became a very kind of robust system. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And that's kind of the way I study things just in general, whether that was school or whether that was like any video game. I play a lot of Dota 2 now, and that game, I had the same thing. Just put a lot of hours in, study when you can, and it'll eventually gradually come to you.
Yeah. And I was curious about that because I come from a gaming background too, although it was specifically more role-playing games. And like if it was multiplayer, it was party, it was less competition. So it had less pressure on it. But what kind of habits and traits from your gaming background, World of Warcraft, Dota, do you feel make you successful and do you think carry over to poker?
Definitely a couple of things. The first one is going back to the point where you brought up where reading books is actually a really great thing to understand different pathways. In gaming, let's take World of Warcraft, for example. You have so many different types of heroes you can play. You can play a priest, you can play a paladin, you can play a warrior. There's so many different things you can do and so many different roles you can play that if you just choose one and just learn your role, you're never going to be as good at the game as someone who knows everything about all the roles. So that's definitely a super great thing to bring from any game to poker. Understanding the people that you're playing with to a certain extent is very important in video games. Again, going back to WoW, like not just knowing the other classes, but knowing the people that you're playing with, knowing who is good at what in certain situations. That goes into poker in the same way as you need to realize that some people have different tactics and some people approach the game in different ways. And you have to not only know that the old guy next to you is a classic old man coffee, but you have to know exactly what he's thinking in certain situations, what he thinks of you and how he's going to react to certain situations. And then that only gets deeper when you get into good players and figure out what level of thinking they're on. And there's just so many factors that go into it.
I agree. Super essential to know your opponents. And that's why in like one of the first series I put up on YouTube, there's the video on player typing, finding the player types, the 5 different types, who they are, what they are about, how they react. And that whether you want to play just one style or all of them, it's essential to know what the other styles are so that you don't think everyone's thinking like you, because they aren't. You don't need to be able to play all roles, but you're going to be a lot better off if you understand all the roles, all the player types, all the kind of unique situations that come up in poker where someone may be more aggressive or more passive. And the more situations you can get into or talk to other people about, the more you'll kind of know what to look for.
Yeah, and back a couple of years ago when I was playing way more seriously and I was way better than I am now, I was coaching some people myself, and that was the thing I saw most common, especially with young live players that haven't really played online that much, is that they would be like, yeah, this person's a fish, I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, how does that person perceive this spot? You say they're a fish. I get it. They don't play as much as you, but do you really understand what that means and how they're thinking about the situation? Or are you just calling them a fish just because they don't play as much as you? There's a really big difference in that.
100%. And I think also when people are first getting into it, kind of like your story about the Negreanu book, is we want to learn the lingo so that we can sound cool and we can look like we fit in and we can look like we're the star at the table. But we get the terminology without really looking deep into what it means. So maybe people are saying like, they're calling someone a fish just because it's cool to call them a fish because it means if they're a fish, I'm not a fish. But if they can't specifically break down what it means, then the value isn't there. And I think it's really important for people to recognize it's not about knowing the words. It's about really understanding what's underneath them. And even if you don't know the lingo, if you understand conceptually what the things are and how they work together, you're way ahead of the guy who, dresses like a poker player, talks like a poker player, but looks like a poker player, but doesn't actually know a damn thing. And everyone who's listening has played with that player at the 1-2 or the 2-5 tables.
Yep, definitely, for sure.
All In is brought to you by Gripst Poker Training, where we teach you how to get stacking. Visit www.grips.com to find out more about our holistic approach, which will help you transform your game and transform your life. And if you're interested in playing online poker, visit www.grips.com/free and receive a free training bundle valued at over $200 when you create a new account at one of our partner sites. That's available at www.gripsed.com/free. So talking a little bit about how you said when you played full-time, more serious about it, you were coaching other people, you were better than you are now. How do you balance your career and your passion for poker? Because it sounds like you really love the game. And it sounds like even when you don't play as much, you still get some good results. So how do you balance it and stay in tune?
Yeah, so a really big thing is table selection when I do play, because it is harder because I need to set aside a lot of hours for work. I work a 9 to 5, so it's 40 hours a week for work every week. And when I get home, studying is not really the top thing on my mind. I have to go to the gym, I have to make dinner, I have to do all these things, just live a normal life. And the weekend is only really the time that I get to actually think about and play and study poker. I think I have like an hour every night during the week where I can work and study, and I usually do. But in regards to taking advantage of what I can do, table selection is beyond the most important thing that I can say. It's a very classic phrase. Like you don't have to be the best player in the world as long as you're the best player at your table, right? So at 2-5 no limit, that's really not a hard thing to do. Even though I was way better back then than I am now, I can still definitely beat 2-5 games. I can definitely crush 2-5 games, just because the quality of play is very recreational, and it's very, very fun, and it's very, very easy to beat for someone who has enough of understanding of poker that you understand where to take certain spots and why you're taking them. So finding the balance is tough because, like you said, I really love the game and I want to play as much as I can. Unfortunately, I can't, but I do take advantage of the best spots that I can, like playing these low buy-in, huge guarantee tournaments. It's very amazing because not only can you play the tournament itself, which is always super soft, but you can always play the cash games, which are equally as soft, kind of like the World Series, how that is, where people bust the tournaments, they go play cash, and the cash games end up being super soft. So playing on weekends, playing table selecting, finding the best value tournaments to play, and playing cash games at those tournament series are definitely ways to increase your win rate if you're not playing professionally and you have a job on the side.
I love it. And it's that case of if you're going to play anyway, and you're going to put in 8 hours anyway, why not put yourself in the seat and on the table where you're going to have a higher expectation for those 8 hours without doing anything else? Maybe it takes 15, 20 minutes to get on the right table, but then you're going to reap the rewards of that for the rest of your session. Yep. So I'm curious, what do you look for when trying to find the best table or the best seat?
So there are a couple of things. The main thing is the good thing about playing in the same casino over and over is you kind of see the same people over and over. There's a way for us, like me and my friends, to know who are the fun players and who are the regs because we see them a bunch. That's the best way. If I see a certain guy at a certain table that I know is a really fun player, I'll try to get a seat on that table. Another way, if I don't recognize anyone, or if I'm going to a casino, or it's a big tournament where there are a lot of new people that I don't recognize, I'll mainly look for people who basically just don't look like professional poker players. No hoodies, no sunglasses, alcohol on the table, big stacks at the table. I don't want to go to a table where there are a bunch of fun players, but everyone's playing with 40 big blinds because my win rate is going to be a lot lower. And just looking for tables where the vibe of the table is less intense, because then it gives me a chance to use my conversational skills to, talk up the table, make sure everyone's having a good time, buy people drinks that I want to have drinks. If I can't really do that at a table where everyone's, on their iPads or doing whatever they're doing, not paying really close attention, not having fun, so there's a bunch of factors that you look for. But like I said, the main thing is recognizing and remembering the people who you want to be at your table.
So again, that comes back to the more frequently you are doing something, or the more frequently you're putting yourself in the same environment, the more skilled and adept you're going to be at navigating that environment. And that's why playing at the same club consistently, as opposed to going to a different club every weekend, does have a lot of benefits and pays a lot of dividends. So yeah, I'm big on that environment thing. You talked about going to a table where the vibe is kind of fun, the vibe's kind of positive. There's more of a gambly atmosphere. People are enjoying themselves. They're more open to gamble. I think that's really important. And I also found that for myself as a player, especially when I'm, doing it part-time, that even if the game is going to be the same as it would be at the more serious table, just if skill-wise everything was the same, I'd still rather be on the more fun table, because if I have a break-even session or I have a losing session or a small winning session where it's not like I won like an amount of money that's going to make a big shift for the week or for the month or whatever, I'm going to have had a better time. I'm going to have enjoyed my experience more. And, I'll have more stories. I'll have more stuff to share. And when I drive home from the casino that night, I'm going to feel more happy about the decision I made to go play. Because for me, and I'm sure for you as well, since you're not playing full time, entertainment and enjoyment are also part of what you seek out of poker beyond profit.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about what it's like having a career and playing part-time. Do you feel that there are benefits to having that job and that consistent income? Does it alleviate the pressure in any way? How do you feel things are different doing part-time compared to full-time from before?
Yeah, so there are definitely a lot of positives and negatives with regards to that. Obviously, the positives are it's a fantastic source of supplemental income, and if you love the game, you're going to have a lot of fun on weekends. You're never bored. You always have something to do. You can go to the casino, try to find the best game. It's always competitive. That if there is a competitive drive in you, then you always can fulfill that drive at the casino. The negatives are what we were talking about before, where you have that drive to play, and sometimes that's all you're thinking about. And if you're, sitting at a desk working and all you want to do is play poker, you have to, make sure you're still focused on work and get your work done. Sometimes you just I just want to go play so bad, I just feel it today. I just really, really think I'll do well today. But having that steady paycheck and that steady income is amazing, because obviously that's one of the biggest drawbacks of being a poker professional, right? Is where you don't have a steady income. That's the most stressful part about everything. You just need to make sure that you have a decent amount of money in your life role to make sure you can, pay rent, keep the power on, all that stuff. Whereas if I have a job, I have health insurance, I have all that stuff where I don't have to worry about anything. So that's really nice. It's just I can't put in the volume that I'd want to, and I'm definitely not making the amount of money that I could, obviously, if I was playing poker professionally. But there are other value things that you have to take into account. Like right now I'm building, of course, my resume, and I'm working my way up through this great company that I'm working at. And there's so much value in that alone that isn't portrayed in actual dollars yet that you need to think about.
Yeah, I think the future value is often overlooked, especially when people are like really young. Like we're both pretty young, and there are people who are even younger. They don't know that, there's a steady, if it's the right job, there's a steady build and there's those growth opportunities. And that by sticking it out, you may work harder now for less, but later you're going to get paid more for it. And I think there's also something really key that you said there. When you have your benefits and you have your steady income and you have the bills taken care of, that kind of meets the basic survival needs of like Maslow's hierarchy, where then you can go into higher order functioning, creativity, play, side projects. And when that's in place, when that security is there guaranteed, it's a lot easier to do the other things than when it's uncertain. I think that's why with, people in startups and stuff, they say, make sure you have at least 3 to 6 months of everything covered, so that part of your brain that's thinking about survival isn't going to kick in. Because when it's kicking in, like your creative functions are diminished, your output is diminished, your motivation is diminished. It's a quite different state of being. And what you said about the drive to play and the obsession, but unable to have the outlet, it kind of reminds me of like when you meet that like really amazing woman and you just want to see her like every single day when you first met her, but she's like, I have a job, like I can see you once a week or like twice a week. And you want to see her every day, but when you can't, you're like, okay, I'll see her like once or twice a week. But then you put so much more care and so much thought into like the dates and the experiences you'll have. And so you get more quality. It's kind of like the game selection that you do, because if you only get to play poker 2 times a week, you're going to make sure it's the best session you can have. Whereas if you can play every day, sometimes it can be a little bit easier for that to slip a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the whole girl thing, because it's definitely like using poker as my recreational time during the weekends doesn't make it, there's not a lot of girls in the poker world, It's I would love there to be more, every time I go there, I'm like, hopefully there'll be a nice, girl grinder just hanging out the 1-2 tables I can go talk to, but it just never happens. It's crazy.
Yeah. There are a couple of them hidden out there. There are definitely some hidden gems in the mix, but you got to dig deep to find, for sure.
Definitely, for sure.
That's where I found like adding other interests to my roster of things that I do and things that I'm into made it easier to connect with, really incredible people who didn't necessarily have the poker interest. And it just gave me like more touch points and more talking points. Like I kind of thought, I didn't do this when I was 25. When I was 25, I was 100% all about the grind, like get money, get fame, fortune, all that stuff is what I was thinking, build a legacy, this and that. But as I got older, 29, 30, I started thinking about, okay, like what kind of person would I want to be in a relationship? And what kind of activities would that person be doing? What kind of interests would that person have? And I'm like, let me try those things and see how I feel about them. And, lo and behold, when I went into like energy medicine and like healing work, I'm meeting all these incredible people who are just filled with like love and compassion. Like, okay, this is the vibe that I didn't get in the poker space, and it really balances me out. Does it mean I can't play poker? No. But the type of person I want to meet might not be a poker player, even though I love poker. So, that's for the future. And the cool thing about playing poker or doing a job that you're good at where you're successful and you have a good amount of income and you have a good amount of free time is that you do have those choices of where you want to invest that energy and that money. And the more money you have and the more skills you have, the higher quality of experiences you can invest in. Because I found like, if I just went to a yoga class, I'll meet some people. But if I go to like a yoga training or some workshop where the people are more invested and they're more committed, I'm going to meet like cooler people or like people who are more invested in it. It's a deeper connection. Then it's like if I go to like a workshop that's 7 days, like I'm going to meet people who are really into this thing. I think it's kind of the same with seminars and stuff. And it's really cool that we live in a time where that's available, that whatever you're into, you can meet people who are into it. And the more into it you are, the more you're willing to invest time and money into it. Those are the kind of people that you're going to meet up with. It's just pretty sweet. I feel pretty blessed that we live in this time.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree, for sure. You brought up a great point. If you want to be in a relationship, just imagine the person that you want to be with and what they would be doing, and then try those things out and see, if you like them yourself. And then obviously the odds that you'll meet that person doing the thing that you're doing is going to be higher because they're going to be, doing that thing. So it's a really, really good point. And welcome to Relationship Advice by Evan and Blake.
We got to give them that extra value, man. Just give them what they want. Give them what they need.
Exactly.
Talking about, interests and stuff. What activities do you enjoy to stay balanced? You mentioned that you do your cooking. You mentioned that you do your working out. Are there any types that you're more into and any other hobbies outside of gaming that you enjoy?
Me and my friend group, I have a friend group from college I still hang out with on a regular basis. We like doing pretty much anything that comes our way in Orlando. Orlando is a great place to be because there's always something going on and there's always something free going on. So there's always something that's coming our way that we never experienced before that we're like, this would be cool to check out, So there's a group of say 7 or 8 of us that will go. For example, there's something called the Highland Games that comes to Orlando once a year. It's basically like a Scottish version of a Renaissance festival. It's this really cool thing where it's a huge festival with hundreds and hundreds of people where you just get to watch these people native to Scotland come to Orlando for whatever reason. They just follow the games around and they play these Scottish games. So they'll be trying to throw logs, flip logs, just over themselves, these giant, huge logs that you wouldn't be able to expect someone to even lift up, let alone flip over. They'd be trying to flip them over. And then you got people trying to poke hay with a pitchfork and throw it over a bar. And there's a dance competition. You can do archery, you can axe throw, you can do all these really cool things. They make their own beer, just stuff like that. That's just really cool that you wouldn't expect to ever do in your life. It just, all that stuff comes to Orlando for some reason, and we're able to experience all that. So it's just doing all the fun things that come our way, and also, just doing the obvious like friendly things, like going out to brunch on Sundays sometimes, going to concerts when some good bands are coming up. I just went to Blink-182 not too long ago, which was amazing. And just doing all those really random fun things. There's not really a specific thing I like to do. We live pretty close to the beach, so that's pretty nice to go to every so often as well.
Yeah, it sounds to me like you enjoy the novelty of the experiences, but what you most like to do is share time with this core group of friends that you have. And it sounds like it's really about these people that you like to surround yourself with.
For sure.
Cool. If they don't play poker, I'm kind of curious, what are your friends and family's perception of poker? Like, not just do they support you, but do they actually understand it? Like, what do they think it is when like Blake's going to play poker for the weekend?
Well, it depends. Some of them are different than others. Of course, I've tried to explain to them what poker is and why it's different than a game like roulette or something that you're playing against other people and all that stuff. Different people are more supportive than others. At the beginning, when I first started playing, my mom was very, very, very against everything that I was doing with poker until I bought her a TV. And then she was like, all right, fine, whatever, you're fine. But I explained to her, like, realistically, I explained to her what it is. And whenever me and her have like a really deep conversation about anything, she like actually listens to me and she understands where I'm coming from with certain things. Sit her down and I explained to her, this is what this is what I'm doing with it, and this is how I am separating my real life funds and life from this thing that I really want to aspire to do. If she sees me explain all that stuff and I have a plan, that I'm not going to just sell everything I have to get a buy-in for 1-2 no limit, she'll believe me and she'll be super supportive, which she has been. She's hosted me and my friends when we came down there and played poker tournaments. Now she's completely fine with it. My dad loves it. My dad calls me so much just talking about just random things with poker and all that stuff. He loves to ask how it's going. And he loves to hear about all the stuff I'm doing. And it's really awesome to have their support, and I really like it. My family, whenever we get together for Thanksgiving, we have a huge family. We're Italian, so we have a huge family. So everyone always asks, that's always the topic of conversation, like, how's poker going? They don't really understand it that well, but they love to hear me talk about it. My friends, they don't really understand it. A lot of them have asked me to teach them some poker. And I have friends who are engineers and friends who are doctors. So they're very smart people, and they could definitely learn the game if they actually tried. It's just, it's a huge investment. And I actually told them, like, you can learn this. You can be ridiculously good. You can be way better than me at this game if you put the time into it. But this is the investment that's going to come with it. And this is about the amount of time that you need to actually become a winning player. And this is the process that will get you there. Once I explained all that to them, they're like, not really sure. I think I'm going to stay as an engineer, But they understand enough to, be supportive of me. I can't really talk poker with them ever because they don't understand on that level. But I do have other poker friends like Zev for that, which is nice to have that balance of real life friends who understand and support me, and a balance of poker friends that I can actually talk hands with and that understands some stuff that I'm going through with poker.
Yeah, it sounds really amazing that you have that kind of support from your family. And it sounds like, you did what you really need to do, which is show them that you have a plan. You're not just gambling, you're actually investing, that you have a specific strategy, you have specific expectation, you've broken down the numbers. And that point you made about separating the bankroll and being like, if my poker bankroll busts, I'm okay because I still have my life roll. I think that really sets people at ease, because they're afraid that, there's a degenerate gambler in the family who's going to tap into the funds and lose the house. And you're saying, like, it's not like that. And if it ever did come to that, I'm going to stop playing. Like, my choices are either make this bankroll work or I don't get to play poker. And that you're not just going to reload at whatever the cost is.
It's funny that you brought that up, because I remember the very first time I got super, super drunk was when I was, I probably shouldn't say how old I was, but like I was pretty young, and I was over at my friend's house that was near It was like right across the street from where I lived. I still lived at home with my parents at the time, and I got so drunk that my friends had to walk me home. And we knocked on my door. That's when I very first started getting interested in poker. And my dad answers the door. He's like, "What happened to Blake? Did he get a girl pregnant? Did he mortgage the house to play poker?" I was like, I wasn't saying anything the entire time because I was like so like out of it. And I looked up like, "Dad, how would I mortgage the house? What doesn't even make sense?" But it was just so funny. And then my friend's just like, "No, he's just drunk." But it's just like, did he mortgage the house? So obviously my parents had a lot of worries I didn't know about. Like when I first started playing, that they would like think that I knew how to mortgage the house to get funds to play.
That's awesome. It sounds so like funny. You got a really supportive family, and there's lots of like good vibes in the house.
Definitely, yeah, for sure.
All around. Cool. You mentioned that you talk to your well-educated friends who have careers and stuff about what it would take to become a winning player and the process. What do you feel the amount of time is required, and what's fourth step? Keep it as simple as possible, and people can fill in the framework and the blanks later on their own or through asking questions. But what do you feel the process is, and how long it takes to start winning?
So it's a little bit like how I explain it to them is basically only based off of what I went through. So if I were to give 4 steps on it, I would say first, you need to be inspired to play. You need to be completely inspired and need to want to be a winner. You can't just be like, this is a game that I can make money at, so I'm going to do it. No, you need to want to be good at the game, and you need to have kind of that competitive edge to you where you're like, the money's nice, but it's about being the best and being better than other people and actually winning. And then the money just comes with that. So you have to have that inspiration to want to learn about the game instead of just doing it because you can. The second step would be, of course, effort. The amount of effort that you would need to put in is so immense. I remember like when I first started watching your videos, I would be studying. I was in school at the time, but I, completely disregarded most of my schoolwork, unfortunately. But like, I still did pretty good. I could have studied a lot more than I did, but I still did really good in school. But I studied for 10 plus hours every single day, basically. And I know that's a little much. By studying, I mean watching videos and rewatching videos and, doing the live sessions and then actually putting in volume where I could. Because I had that inspiration from the first step, I wanted to do that. Poker is all I could think about back in those days. I was just completely focused. That's the only thing I cared about in the entire world. I actually had a really amazing girlfriend at the time, my high school sweetheart, that the relationship actually got kind of ruined because I was so into it. I think the relationship was kind of actually fading before that, but I was so into poker that she just was not a priority on my mind, and the relationship ended understandably breaking off because she wasn't a priority on my mind because I was so focused on poker. But that's the amount of effort that I was putting in to the game, and that's all I cared about was studying and playing for as much as I can, as long as I can. As soon as I got home, I dropped everything over my laptop, and poker was on my mind. The third step, inspiration, put in the effort. The third step, I guess, would be patience. So you need to understand with anything, like with working out, like you're not going to get results over one day, It's the same thing with poker and with a lot of different things in life. But with poker specifically, I was explaining to my friends, you're not going to be better than me in the next 2 weeks. You're not going to be better than me in the next 6 months. You need to have patience and put in the effort and be inspired in order to be the best. But it's going to take time for you to understand because this is such a complex game that has so many moving parts. And as you're learning it, the game's going to change with the amount of time that you're learning it. So you're going to need to relearn some certain things as the meta shifts. So that's a super important thing to think about. And the fourth step, I guess, would be to separate emotionally, because that's, the biggest thing in poker. That's what my engineer friend, actually, I was talking to him. He was the one who was most interested in learning it. Is I was like, you need to separate yourself emotionally from money because you're going to be, betting a lot of money in certain situations once you get good. And I explained to him, I was like, I've been in private games where I was betting like a really big portion of my salary in one bet. And I just didn't think about it. I thought it in terms of big blinds, which is what you need to do. And if you don't think about it like that, you're going to have a lot of issues in playing your optimal game in those higher buying games, which is the time where you need to be playing your most optimal, because that's going to be where your highest win rate is, hopefully, in those higher games.
I'd like to talk a little bit more about the mental game, because it sounds like you apply it very well. And to me, the mental game of poker is actually about emotional management during, before, and after. But what does the mental game mean to you? And do you have any specific practices regarding the mental game that you use to improve your results?
So I don't meditate personally. I know it's a very good tactic and I definitely should, but I don't meditate, and I feel like I definitely highly recommend that to anyone who is playing professionally or just needs emotional stability in their life is to meditate, because I know it works a lot for a lot of my friends. But for me personally, the mental game to keep myself off tilt, and there's a couple points to this, but like to keep myself off tilt, I just have to realize, and I have realized this, is that variance is just a thing and it's going to happen. And I've kind of just come to terms with that. And it kind of just helps me not get worried. I mean, some bad beats will kill you, of course, but like, most situations out. Like, for example, at the final table of this tournament that I just won, when we were 8-handed, I got it all in for like 25 bigs effective. So it was 50 big blind pot, pretty big spot in that situation, because we weren't too deep. I think I had so many big blinds, but I got all in with aces versus jacks, jack on the river, doubled them up, and he had 50 big blinds. He was to my left. He was a good player. And I was like, oh, sucks, whatever. I just did not let it affect me at all. And that guy, the guy that busted in the bubble, I was on my rail. I went up to my friend Zev a couple hands after that, and he's like, dude, there's nothing you can do about that. The guy, not Zev, the guy, he's like, dude, there's nothing you can do about that. It sucks. I'm like, listen, man, I'm totally cool with it. It's not helping that you're bringing it back up right now. But like, I'm totally cool with it, man. It's totally fine. I get it, variance, whatever. But it's just, for me personally, I know it's gonna be different for a lot of people because emotional control is more severe in certain people than others. Like, I just understand that variance is a thing, and I just, but another part of the mental game that doesn't have to deal with me personally, but I feel is really important. It has to deal with the other people at the table, right? It goes back to what we were talking about before, where you want a fun atmosphere at the table. You need to be a part, if you can. If you're the type of person who's at all sociable, you need to be adding to the fun. Going to a fun table and just sitting there and playing poker is going to bring down the vibe of the table a little bit. But if you go to a fun table and you make friends with the fun players, they're going to want to play with you and they're not going to want to leave, which increases your win rate by so much that I feel like it's completely undervalued by a lot of people that just go there and try to play their best game. Of course, like focusing on honing in and playing your best game is good, but if you're playing in these live games and these soft live games where there's multiple fun players, it's way better, in my opinion, for your win rate to keep them in the game as much as you can and make them want to play with you in the future than it is that small value that you're getting from focusing and honing in and not talking to them at all. And it's really easy to strike conversation with these guys because they're all just going there and having fun. They're relaxing and they want to talk to you. You just have to, ask them who they are, what they do, make jokes with them, drink with them if you need to, not too much obviously, but it's so much value that I feel like people, especially people who play these games, 2-5, even 5-10, pass up on, is they just do not see the value in, being social and talking to these people that are going to increase your win rate by so much. It's just kind of crazy to me how people don't see that.
It's a lot like meditation, where it's one of those things where people can tell you the benefit, but until you've actually experienced the benefit, you can't fully understand. You're like, whoa, that's what they were talking about. And when it comes to socializing at the poker table, yeah, like from a strategic perspective, definitely people are more willing to play pots with you. You can get more bluffs through. You can get paid off more easily. There's so many benefits from a financial perspective, but also from an enjoyment perspective and the feeling perspective and the quality of life perspective you get from being friendly with people as opposed to just being enemies with everyone has a massive shift on like your consciousness and your state and your well-being. And there's just like so much additional benefit that goes beyond the profit, that goes beyond the finance. I know Phil Galfond wrote an article way back in the day on the topic of happiness EV. And he was looking at it as, you know, what other things to spend time on than just poker. But we can get a lot of happiness from poker if we are part of the game. Like you say, if we're adding to the fun, you know, we're not going there to be, you know, a vampire, to suck all the money and to suck all the fun and suck all the life out of the table. We're actually going there to be a light, to bring some more enjoyment, bring more fun. We'll bring more money, but maybe we'll kind of act as like a magnet that pulls money in, but we'll happily give away the other stuff, the joy and the pleasure and the fun, to make it a fair trade. And actually, like a lot of things in life, people trade money for pleasure. People trade money for happiness. People trade money for information. And poker being a microcosm of life, if you're someone who brings entertainment and knowledge and, you know, interesting topics of conversation, in a way, it's actually very natural for people to give you money for that. So it doesn't feel weird when people are losing money to their like favorite person who like, oh man, I'm so excited to play poker this weekend because maybe Blake will be at my table and Blake's the man. That's actually like a pretty cool thing that I hadn't really thought about it in depth before, but going beyond the finances. Like I know there's a lot of things that we do as poker players. Like one of the reasons I got into meditation, I'm like, oh, right, it'll help me like be more focused and play longer and like be more resilient and all this and that. And it's like performance and achievement is what led me to take on the new habit and try to develop the new skill. But once I developed it, I'm like, oh, wow, there's so much more to it. I didn't see the big picture, but now I do. And I'm so glad that I got driven towards that. And I think it's the same with socializing at the table, which then leads to like, you're in a good state. It leads to being able to socialize off the table. And I know from being someone who is very shy and reserved and anxious in a lot of social situations that it really like kind of limited my experience. And as I developed my social skills and became more comfortable, and the poker table was a great place to do that because it's a place where I felt very comfortable and confident to begin with, there's a great domino or ripple effect that confidence carries into other areas. I'm like, okay, if I can be social at the table, I can be social at a restaurant, or if I'm social at a restaurant, I can be social on the bus. And like being social just opens up the whole world in a way that really nothing else can. And even making all the money in the world doesn't open the world up in the same way that having good social skills and being an enjoyable person to be around and having strong relationships really can.
Yeah, totally agree.
What is the importance of community, friendship, and love to you?
That's what we're all working for, right? Like, you know, you work your job, you play poker, you do everything you do to finally find, you know, love and friendship. That's how you become happy in my eyes. I mean, some people may find happiness in different ways, but for me, I do all the things I do when I'm, you know, trying to make money or whatever it is, to, you know, have great people in my life and build great relationships. That's how I find happiness. And that's if that is how you find happiness too, that's what your end goal should be.
Yeah. I think as a human being, it's pretty hard to find that level of happiness in anything else. There are a lot of things that, you know, can come close, and we can experience a lot of happiness through our passions and through our hobbies and working on things. But the feeling that comes from really connecting with another human being or a group of human beings and being a part of something bigger than just ourselves, really uncomparable. And the more evolved we are in our own levels of happiness with the things that we do personally, the even greater benefit we can get when we come together. All In is brought to you by 888 Poker, the second largest online poker network in the world, home of the 888 Live Tour and some of the best structured, big guaranteed tournaments online. If you'd like to support the show, visit 888.com and use the promo code ALLIN when you make your first deposit. Make a $20 deposit or more and receive $20 extra in cash to play with instantly. 888 Poker has the softest games online and is a great place to get started in the world of online poker. Don't forget to use the promo code ALLIN to help support this podcast. What are your thoughts on performance-enhancing drugs in poker?
That is a good question that I'm not sure I'd be the best person to answer in terms of how they help. I think I tried Adderall once during one tournament, and it didn't really help me that much to where I would want to take it more often. I mean, of course, it makes you more focused or whatever, but it's not worth it to me to spend the money to get it and then add that to your win rate, all that value stuff that goes into taking the drugs. But as to where I think if they should be allowed or not, I think that no matter what we do, we're not going to stop them unless we start drug testing people, of course, which is not going to ever happen. Personally, I'm not sure if this will be controversial or not. I don't see a problem with performance-enhancing drugs in the poker space because it's just enhancing someone's knowledge that they currently have, and whether that's making them more focused or less focused. Like, there are things people that aren't taking drugs can do to make themselves more focused that they're not doing. Like some guy that goes like me and like goes and sleeps and gets 4 hours of sleep before a day two, going and complaining about someone using performance enhancing drugs. Like, come on, man. Like, what are you? That's not even fair. Like, you could be doing so many things to increase your performance that you're not doing. Now you're gonna complain about someone because they're using drugs when you could be doing all these things, but you're just too lazy to do them. Of course, using drugs in general is not, considered the best thing. And I don't use them personally for to perform better at poker. But I just think that there are so many things that, like I said, people can be doing to increase their focus that they're not doing, that they shouldn't be allowed to complain about people using a drug to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when it comes to performance-enhancing drugs, everyone pays the consequences for what they do. And performance-enhancing drugs, or any drugs for that matter, are basically trying to take a shortcut that in the short run will have benefits, but in the long term will have costs. If you use all your adrenaline in an hour when it was supposed to last you a week, well, the next 6 and 3/4, 7/8 days are not going to be too good. And people can use these drugs and they'll improve their performance. They're not going to make them, a god overnight, unless they already have that knowledge. It gives them access to the knowledge they already have, like you said. But there is a serious rebound effect. And I think from a long-term perspective, it's very unsustainable. And that using things like you said, man, just rest, exercise, good food, proper herbal teas, things like that can give people the benefit they need in a more sustainable level, in a not so overdose. Because I remember I probably did Adderall somewhere between 5 and 10 times. And the last time I did it, I'd been exercising a lot, meditating. I was living really clean. I was living really healthy. And when I took the Adderall, I was just like, that got my heart going way too fast. I don't need to be this amped up. I don't need to be this high and buzzing. I'm already in a really good state. In fact, I found the state that I need to be at to play well. I don't need anything to shift it other than maybe the right music or, breathing or tea. I think when drugs are used by people who don't really understand, they think it's a magic pill that's going to make everything work. And I think that they actually should be looked at more as it's a last resort. If you're playing a 7-day tournament and by day 5 you're exhausted, to use some enhancement for day 6, day 7, I mean, it kind of makes sense. You kind of don't have a lot of other options, but you're also knowing if I do this for 2 days, I'm going to feel the effects for 2 weeks. So the question is always, well, then is it worth it? And I think in most cases, it's A, not worth it, and B, really not necessary.
Yeah, totally agree, for sure.
Talking about that, and also talking about really extreme work ethic, because I've had that. I think most of the people who excel in poker do have an extreme work ethic. I'm curious if you ever suffered from addiction, anxiety, or depression in your journey through poker.
I never suffered through addiction, which is amazing, and I'm happy to say that for sure. Anxiety, not so much. Depression, yeah, a little bit. Mainly through stuff that didn't have to do with poker. I put a lot of focus on relationships and just, the romantic part of my life. And there were a couple of situations with girls that were not so nice to me, that did certain things that were not too good, that made me feel pretty bad about myself and my life. Nothing like too serious. Like I wasn't like, ever suicidal or anything, but I became sad and like depressed for a little bit, which definitely affected my poker game a lot, because that was like the second girl who did this was like right when I was smack dab in the middle of that inspired era of my life where I was just like poker all the time, every day, all that stuff. And she ruined our relationship. And that was a person that I really enjoyed having around in my life. She was a really good, person in my life. And that just completely stopped. It not only stopped relationship, which is, what I strive for, a lot of, not all of my happiness, but that's a good portion of my happiness is sharing experiences with a significant other. Personally, it's just something I like to do. It not only wrecked that part of my life, but it also wrecked the poker part of my life for a little bit as well, because I couldn't focus because I was so focused on that. Of course, you're not going to play your A game in poker. You're not going to want to play when this crazy thing happens to you. Imagine like you in your most driven and inspired state when you're studying poker and someone just saying, you're not going to do this for 3 weeks. It's just, it takes away that part of your life, and it took away, I went through a really bad phase through that. Not necessarily because of poker, but poker did play a part in it, just because I couldn't play it and I couldn't fulfill that part of myself.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. And it's dangerous when we put too much of our like dependency on happiness in something outside of ourselves that we don't have control of. I know we were talking about how relationships are a great way to like build happiness, but we want to have a base within ourselves. We want to have kind of a full well that we can always tap into for our happiness. And, I've had partners who, at first they were okay with the poker, and then, later they weren't so sure about it. And they're like, so like, when are you going to get a real job? And I'm like, what do you mean? Why would I need to get a real job? And they're like, well, so you can like have a family and all this and that. I'm like, I make more money than any of the people right now, and I work really hard at what I do. But when there's enough of that like resistance against it, then I start questioning, am I doing something wrong by playing poker? Like, is this a mistake? And what I realized, like, as I got a little older and looking back, is that there wasn't necessarily any problem with my choice of career. The fact that I was a poker player, the fact that I made my money by playing a game, that was totally fine. But when energetically, 95% of my effort was put towards poker, only 5% was left for relationships, those relationships were bound to suffer. Now, the options are, do what you did, just acknowledge that this is where I'm moving towards and this is where I want to be. So I'm going to have to let this go is kind of the healthy choice. And the other one's to try to kind of like hold on and keep a relationship going that isn't really getting the attention that it needs. You made a great point that when we hit a state where we don't feel at our best, we don't feel our most confident, it's important to stay away from, poker, but we'll just say like gambling, for example, or anything that can be addictive, because wagering money and the swings of money is like an amplifier on everything that we feel. So if we're feeling good and we're playing poker and winning, we're going to feel extremely good. But if we're feeling bad and we're playing poker and exposing ourselves to these fluctuations in wealth, it's going to be magnified. And that's why it's very dangerous to play in a down state, and why when those things happen, it's essential to go back to what makes you happy, whether that's gaming, self-care, sport, talking to people who do care about you, doing something novel, reading, watching a movie, listening to the right music, whatever it is, reconnect with that thing where you're like, okay, this makes me feel happy. This makes me feel good. I lost this source of happiness, but I still have a lot of happiness within. Like, I'm okay. Life's going to be okay. I feel good about stuff. You know what? Yeah, I want to play again. And honoring that process instead of being like, oh, poker's made me feel good before, I'm going to run to poker and it's going to make everything okay. Because poker, I feel like in and of itself does not make things okay. Poker can amplify things. If things are going good, poker's going to make it look like things are going great. But if things are going bad, most likely poker's going to amplify those bad feelings or only be a short-term temporary distraction that when your winning session doesn't happen, the truth sets in and the truth's a little heavier.
Yeah, good points for sure.
Okay, so how did you overcome it? You said you had that 3-week period where she said you couldn't play and you kind of lost that. What did you do to deal with it?
Well, I mean, it's it's a little bit different. It's not like she said I couldn't play. It was something that she did that ruined the relationship that like made us break up, and then I couldn't play. I couldn't when I really couldn't like physically play because I was like so depressed. I was just in bed like, for like 3 days, not eating or drinking or anything. But as soon as that relationship ended, which was that day, I just had no. It's not that I had no desire to play. It's just I didn't want to associate poker, I guess, with this bad feeling I was having, and I didn't want to play with this bad mindset. And of course, I wouldn't be playing my A game, like I said, and I would be losing money. So she was fine. She was, ecstatic with me playing poker when we were together, but she made a pretty big mistake that caused the relationship to end and caused a lot of the stuff to unfold. But it took like a couple of weeks, and then it's like a super super corny way I got over it. Honestly, I kind of just sat up after like 3 weeks of moping around and being super fucking miserable, like just super dead. I've never felt that way in my entire life. And I kind of just looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, I can't tell you this is like the most cringy, corny thing I've ever said in my life. But I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, you're going to play 100,000 hands of poker this month and you're going to kill it. And you're just going to, you're going to have like a 12 big blind per 100 win rate over those 100,000 hands. You're going to put in so much volume. You're going to crush right now. Let's go and do it. Boom, done. And then I went to my computer and I'm like, I can't do this. I gotta sit down. I'm so done. But it took me like a couple of days, then I got back into it. But like just pepping myself up, talking with friends, because a lot of my friends knew the situation. They knew her and they were great for me to get over it. They took me out. They helped me get over it a lot. It took a long time. I was actually in a very bad state for relationship-wise for years beyond that because it affected aspects that should be good in a relationship, trust factors and all that stuff really affected that part of my life. So it was hard for me to have a relationship with someone because of the conversations me and this girl had before getting a relationship with her. And I like told her, I was like, I already had trust issues at the time. And she spent so much time convincing me that she was just like amazing girl. And of course, after 6 months, all this stuff happened. So I was in a really bad state for like two and a half years after that. But poker-wise, I got over it in like a month, maybe a month and a half or so. And it just took a lot of self-motivation to get back into the game.
Did getting back in the game and getting in the flow and doing things that made you confident again help you with that kind of 2.5-year process of looking at the trust issues? Like, did having higher self-confidence give you the energy to be like, if I can do poker, I can examine some of this trust stuff and work through some of these things too? Was there a correlation there?
The poker thing did help me a lot through what I was going through because it, like you said, it did give me the confidence in other aspects of my life. Like I have this thing that I'm better than anyone I know at, and I can make money off of it, and I enjoy it, and I still have this inspiration. But in regards to relationship-wise, in that factor, it really didn't. It didn't really affect anything because that was just such a major thing to me that was completely separated from everything else in my life.
Mm-hmm. Have you done things to work on that? Like, have you either like talked to therapists or talked to friends or like healing groups or other relationships to give you new, I guess we call them like imprints, where like whatever the most highly charged emotional moment around a topic is, that's going to be your kind of strongest imprint. And every other similar situation is going to draw to that as the default of kind of assessing, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And if we have a highly charged emotional situation around like a trust issue, that the way to heal that, we take some time to build to it, but is find ourselves in a similarly highly emotionally charged situation where the reverse is true. And then that becomes like kind of the primary imprint.
I didn't personally go to any therapists or anything like that. Friends helped, of course, but the main thing that helped me rebuild that inner feeling where I could, automatically give someone the benefit of the doubt in a relationship where this person didn't do anything to me, so I should automatically trust them until they prove otherwise that I shouldn't. The thing that really got me to do that was a lot of, actually, I guess this could be considered meditating. I'm the type of person that really likes to, especially with these huge not life-changing, but, life-impacting things, to sit down, and it takes me a while, but like I like to sit down and just like think in my head and just be with myself and think about what happened, why it happened, every single factor in the situation, every single tiny little thing, and what the future is going to hold and how I need to think about the stuff in the future, because obviously I can't think about this stuff in a negative way. Kind of relating it to understanding variance in poker, like what we were talking about before, right? Understanding variance in poker and using that factor alone to deal with not getting on tilt, just understanding that variance is going to be there, is not an easy thing to do. You need to really understand and kind of accept it. So it's kind of using that factor, because that's how I deal with tilt. The same thing I do to understand variance. I understood trust issues in relationships. It took me a lot longer to do this than it did for variance, but I sat down, I'm like, okay, these are the factors that go into my experience. This is the factors that go into other people's experience who have the same kind of experiences as I do. These are telltale signs of people who could be possibly people who would do this to someone. This is what that girl said to me at the start of the relationship, and this is how she acted right after that, and this is how she acted when she was being sketchy. So this is the factor that led up to all that. It's just so many different factors that I sit down and I just think through everything. That really helps me get over it, and it really helped me move on.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm very familiar with this process. We look at the why, we look at the source, we kind of look at everything that happened from as many angles as we can, and we get an understanding. Like, usually the truth is there if we look at it, and usually if we miss the truth, it's because we didn't want to see it, or because we're too busy rushing around doing other things to really sit and look at it. So what you're saying, taking time to yourself, thinking on something, that's a form of meditation, is being present with those thoughts. All In is part of the Poker News Podcast Network, which covers everything from the world of poker with plenty of insight, analysis, strategy, and commentary. To learn more about the other shows on the Poker News Podcast Network, look them up on Audioboom. We're getting near the end of our sesh, because it's getting pretty late and this old man is going to need some sleep. Cool. But yeah, let's get into the really juicy stuff. Cool. I would like to know, what's your dream? Like, if you had $100 million in the bank, what would you be doing? Where would you be living? Who would you be sharing your precious time with? And what would it all feel like? Try to really bring us into the moment of what this dream life would be like.
Jeez, that is a very deep question. So something I've been doing more over the recent years is looking to travel more, so I could find that place that I'd really want to, spend time in case a situation like that ever happened. I recently went to Italy, to Amsterdam, all over the US, mainly for work and sometimes for poker. I haven't yet found the place that really just clicks with me, that I'm just like, this is the place I need to be 100%. I'm happy in Orlando right now because the family and friends are here and all that stuff. But in regards to just environment and places that I want to just know 100%, like when I retire or when I'm just nothing to worry about, I want to be here. I want to keep traveling until I find that place, but I haven't found it yet. In regards to who I want to spend the time with, I would love to be close to friends and family, but of course, that all depends on where this place is that I figure I want to live at, and hopefully that is a place that's close to friends and family. but I would definitely 100% like a significant other that would enjoy all those things with me. That's like one of my main goals, is to have a family and, expand my happiness through my family, for sure. But in regards to like material things, I live a pretty frugal lifestyle. Like I don't really need a lot of material things. A nice house is always great, and that's something I would probably invest in if I had that kind of money. But nice cars aren't, really my thing. I would just care that I wake up in the morning and I'm happy with my family, and that everyone was stress-free or enough to be happy. Like you can't be completely stress-free all the time, but everyone was set and stress-free and happy, and just that's where I want to be. It's not essentially about the money. It's about, who you're with, so it's about who you're with and where you are and what you're enjoying, and the fact that you can be happy. As corny as that sounds, that's how I envision it, is not really focusing on the $100 million, but finding someone, maybe using that money to travel to find someone if I need to spend that time with. If that makes sense.
I love it. That's the secret. It doesn't matter what you have. It's who you've got to share it with, whatever it is. And if you've got happiness and good relationships, you don't need all the things that the marketers and the media would have you believe that you need.
Yep, exactly.
You already talked about happiness. You already talked about success. You already talked about the highs and what it's like to really... Did you get a feeling when you chopped that tournament? Because it was a four-way chop you guys did?
Yeah, four-way chop.
Did you get a feeling when you chopped that tournament of like, this is what my hard work was for? This is what it was building towards on any level?
Yes, but not as much as I thought. So when I chopped that tournament, I had the feeling of the fantastic tournament's over. I did it. Chop the tournament. This is what I was working for the past 2 days, if not like my entire poker career, is chopping a big tournament like this. But right when I chopped that tournament, right when I was looking at the ICM numbers, actually, they gave them to me, and I was the last person to accept. The 3 people accepted. I was looking at it. I'm just like, 18K, huh? That's not 31, which was first place. So I'm just staring at it. I'm like, I can't say no to this right now, because these 3 people that are left are pretty decent, and the stacks are kind of even. I was like, not four-handed's not my specialty, especially after not practicing for forever. So I had to take it. But after I took the 18K, I was like, this is nice. This is what I was working for. But when's the next big tournament? I want to play a bigger one. I want to win more. This isn't the end at all. This isn't my end goal, winning 18K. Winning 18K is not at all my end goal. My end goal is earning enough money to be able to invest and then focus on other aspects of my life and not have to put in 40 hours of my life per week working, when I could just have that money coming in automatically and spending that time in other aspects of my life. So that's the end goal. Of course, that's going to take a lot more than 18K, but definitely did get a form of gratitude and accomplishments winning that. But that is definitely not the end goal, and I didn't really get the feeling of this is what I was working for. Like you were explaining, because that's a part of what I'm working for, but that's not all the way there yet. So I still have a long way to go.
Totally, it's definitely a case of like, my hard work is paid off, but this is not the end. And it's amazing how the ego works, where like you're looking at this thing and you got this great deal in front of you, and the ego's like, but I want all of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, but that's not very rational. And he's like, I'm not rational. I want all of it. And then when this is done, I want to take this 31K and put it on a 25K high roller and win that. And then whatever I win there, I want to roll again, because it just wants more and more.
Isn't that what Charlie did? I feel like Charlie did. I feel like this is the impression I have of Charlie. Charlie's a complete sicko. I never met him. I'd never talked to him, obviously. But like, what I noticed from Charlie is that he won some tournament. I forget which one it was, like a long time ago. And then immediately after that, he just started winning high rollers out of nowhere. So is that what he did? Did he just win a tournament and start just playing high rollers and just binking every single high roller that he played? Or what's his story?
Well, I'll find out when I get him on the
Okay,
show
cool.
because I'm lined up to talk to him next week, I think.
Perfect.
I think the tournament you're talking about him winning was the
It was the
UKIPT.
one I just
Or,
remember the first time I saw. Yeah, he was celebrating. I remember him after winning, like him going and taking pictures in the video that I watched. That's all I remember. But it was definitely a live event for sure.
okay, yeah, there was that one. And then he went to play high rollers, but I think he was selling action. He wasn't just firing off. And I'm pretty sure the first high roller he played, he made the final table.
Yeah.
So then he just rolled from there. But like he had a lot of money from like the Sunday Million win, other tournament scores, plus he just been crushing cash. I'm pretty sure he's been very financially responsible with his bankroll the whole time. But maybe he'll surprise me when I put him on the
Yeah,
spot.
but he's living a life that's like amazing, right? Like he'll just think ninth place in a tournament like he just did, and he was like, you know what? I'm not gonna play the main event. I'm just gonna or whichever one he didn't play.
Yeah.
And then I'm just gonna hang out with my girlfriend instead. I'm like, that's amazing, man. Like that's exactly what I want. Just be like, you know what? I haven't spent time with my girlfriend. I just got ninth place. Let's just go hang out with my girlfriend instead.
And that's actually kind of what it is. Because what you were talking about when you're like, okay, when's the next big tournament? I had the same thing, Falls View, the night before the final table or the night before the final 20. I went through the payouts and I looked, I'm like, okay, if I get ninth, that's my Vegas bankroll. If I get eighth, then I can add in, a couple extra events. Seventh, I can play the Hard Rock Series in Florida. Sixth, I can go to World Series. If I get first for like 200K, I can play every tournament on the tour. Boom. EPT, all that. And when we made the deal and the tournament was done, I'm like, dude, I'm exhausted. I don't want to play any more tournaments. Like, yeah, I thought I would. And that like motivated me to stay focused and respect the situation I was in, the opportunity I had. But afterwards, I'm like, I don't want to do any more tournaments. Like, I want to go hang out with my family. I want to go relax. I want to unwind. I'm so wound up right now. And when we're in that state of being really wound up, we're thinking like, oh, I need to wind myself up more because I'm that far towards like the side of the spectrum. But really, we need to come back to balance. And that's where like family, friends, or other activities brings us back to a place where we can get calm and then we can actually be aware of what happened and be grateful for it as opposed to just needing more because we're still on go mode. So like him going to hang out with his girlfriend is just showing like he's living kind of this life that's very different from what's common in poker, but it's very balanced because he's like, okay, I put in my work and now I've kind of feel I've done enough work. I want to go, experience some love and some company and like unwind. And then when he feels called to play, he'll go play the next one. But until then, he's going to enjoy his life. Whereas if it's I work, and then I play an event and then I work and then I play another event and I work and there's no time to actually enjoy. It's like, well, what am I working for? If I'm making all this money, but I never get to spend it on the things I enjoy and the people I enjoy, well, what's the point? And that's when motivation can start to dip. So having that balance early on in one's career is an absolute godsend.
For sure. Definitely.
Cool. So I got one more question for you before I let you go.
Sure.
For any of the listeners who are just starting out, I think, you've got a pretty inspiring story and there's only more to come. Obviously, you're kind of on like the launching pad of your poker career, even if it is part-time. But what would you go back and tell your younger self when you were starting out with poker? If there's anything you could do differently, what would it be?
Play live sooner. I guess for anybody just starting up, just taking into those four things that I listed out into what it takes to become good at the game enough to make the money and make the change that you want. It's super important, especially the patience one, to realize that you just need to know that it's going to take a while to become good enough to where you're feeling confident in yourself and you're going to make like the win rate that you want. It just doesn't happen overnight, and that's something that I definitely tell my younger self because especially back then, I was a sort of competitive person. Like when I was a couple months into my super ridiculous inspiration time where I was like studying and playing 10 hours a day, I was like, why aren't I beating these games for 15 big blinds per 100? What the heck is happening? But I didn't realize that on the other side of the screen, there were people that were playing and doing the same exact thing that I was doing for a lot longer. And it's just realizing that, and you definitely will get there. It's just, you just need to take the time to, and you need to, go through the trenches, kind of like anything. You start off at UPS packing boxes, but you ended up with, over 100K. It's just everything in life. Every job you do is just going to take a long time to get started and get to be the best. But especially with poker, definitely a piece of good advice for anybody, especially in the US, is to, I guess it's kind of different for people in the US and people who can actually play online, but definitely people in the US, if you're playing on those sites, the non-US based sites, is definitely just try to play live poker as much as you can, because live poker is less sketchy than the sites. I don't know if we want to go into the lock poker situation at all, but that was a pretty unfortunate situation. And if I was playing live poker at that time, I wouldn't have lost the lock poker money, and I would have made a lot more money during live. So play live poker as much as you can. The games are super good, and highly recommend going that route if you're looking to start playing, because, like I said, the games are super good and the players are super soft.
Okay, cool. So for anyone who missed that part or just wants to hear it again, if you're taking notes and you want to write it down, Blake's 4 keys for, the process for becoming a winning player is: number 1, make sure you're inspired to play. Make sure this is something you really want to do and that you want to become a winner, not just that you're in it for the money. Make sure it's something that you have a serious love for. And coming from that love, make sure that you have the effort required to put in the results. It's pretty immense. Ensure that you're willing to put in those long days and learn it from the inside out. Much like Blake, I was at university when I found out about poker. I felt I was much more passionate about it. So instead of putting 8 hours a day on university, I was putting 8 hours a day on poker, whether it was watching training videos, reading books, practicing, watching on TV, or just thinking about it. I, put in the effort to get a degree in this game. And that's what Blake's done. And that's what everyone who is really successful in this game has done, is they've chosen, this is the thing that I want to be great at, and I'm willing to do what it takes to be great at it. Number 3 is to be patient. You must be patient, because like working out, you don't go to the gym once and get a 6-pack, but if you go consistently, you will get results over time. You'll be able to take on more challenging things, play in bigger games, and the process becomes more enjoyable, because as we acquire a skill set, confidence, and mastery over something, there is less confusion and a lot more pleasure in the activity. And finally, his 4th point for the process of becoming a winning player is learn to separate yourself emotionally from the money. Be responsible with your money. Be responsible with how you invest it. Be wise with it so that your emotions don't get tied up in it. Because when you're playing for a large percentage of your bankroll, if your rent money or survival money depends on it, it is impossible for the fight or flight system to not get kicked in, to not have you go into survival mode. So really be responsible with your money, respect your money, and separate yourself emotionally from it, which will be much easier if you are following proper bankroll management. This way, you'll be able to make your best decisions in every situation, be unaffected by the previous decisions, except for acquiring information, and be able to play your best poker at every decision point, as opposed to being someone who is, carrying the weight of every previous hand, previous encounter, previous bad beat, or every little previous disservice they had from another player into the next hand. And that emotional baggage is not helpful for poker. When it comes to poker, we want no ego, no emotions, just poker. That is how we get the results, and that is how we move forward in our careers and get to play bigger cash games and bigger tournaments. And the trend just gets to continue. The more you apply yourself, the more time you put in and the more work you put in. Right, Blake?
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show with me, Blake. This has been an absolute pleasure. I couldn't think of a better person to have as the first guest to kick off this new project. If you, the listeners, enjoyed this show, you'd like to give any feedback, feel free to post in the comments or post on the Gripsed Facebook page or send a tweet to @GripsedPoker. I'm also curious, Blake, if anyone wants to follow your poker journey, the little highlights here and there, do you do any social media? Is that something you'd like to share with people who are interested in?
Yeah, so if anybody wants to follow me or my poker journey, my Instagram is Blaketron1, and that's pretty much the only social media I use right now. I don't use Twitter or anything.
Okay, so is that BLAKE?
Yep.
ATRON1?
That's it.
Cool. So now you guys know where you can follow Blake, and we will be coming out with more episodes in the near future. I've got some exciting guests lined up, and I'm really enjoying this process. This two-way conversation. It's a real treat, and I think it'll be a good fit for the community. Thank you for listening to the show, guys. Please give us a thumbs up, and if there's anyone you feel would benefit from some of the topics that were discussed, please share this with them. And when you're done with that, I think you know what it is.
Oh, 100%.
Take what you learned.
Go out there and get stacked. Get stacked.
Yeah, man. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our sponsor, Gripsed Poker Training, and sign up for a free training bundle at www.gripsed.com/free. That's www.gripsed.com/free. Get a training guide and an advanced webinar of your choice, up to 10 hours of training material and over $150 in value, yours absolutely free. Full details are available at gripsed.com/free. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for supporting the show. And when you've got that new training material, plus all your notes from this show